Hello, my beautiful people. Thanks so much for tuning in to ERGJ TV. This is ERGJ, and today we are actually going over another episode of the Education Station. We're actually going to be talking about Gary Johnson today. So, in case you didn't know, there are other presidential candidates that are running other than Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Um, my previous episode, I went over Jill Stein, who was part of the Green Party. And today I thought I would provide some information on Gary Johnson, who is part of the Libertarian Party. Now, I did find a cool little website called ontheissues.org where you can actually look at all of these candidates and see, so up here we got Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, Gary Johnson, Jill Stein, and then all of their, helpers or whatever. But you can look at all of their previous stances on particular topics. So, particularly like Gary Johnson, what stance did he take on abortion back in 2012, 2011, 2001? On the budget and economy all the way back to 2001. So you can see if they've been consistent in what they stand for over time. So I thought this was real cool, www.ontheissues.org. But I really want to get into Gary Johnson. It's the Johnson and Will campaign 2016. Let's take a look at his opening line here and then just dive right into what his campaign is about. And so he wants to make America sane again. This is interesting, good play on words. We need to make America sane again. And he wants to be a libertarian. Now, we can look up what a libertarian really means or what it means, but here's Gary Johnson. Here's Governor Bill Weld. Be libertarian with us. Join us in trying something different. Let's put parties and differences aside while we solve our problems. Together we'll stop the spending and end the wars. Together we'll restore our industrial might. Together we'll rebuild our own roads, bridges, schools, and hospitals instead of building them for the country's half a world away. If in 4 years we as the people decide we didn't like peace, prosperity, and freedom, we can always vote tyranny back into office again. Look at this. Gary Johnson taking a strong stance. All right, so let's take a look at his issues and what he stands for or what this campaign is about. So he wants to end wasteful spending. So I just clicked on issues here. We're going to go through each one of these. Might be a little long today, guys. I'll try to get through it as quickly as possible. But by the time Barack Obama leaves office, national debt will be $20 trillion. That's true. This is not just obscene, it's unsustainable and arguably the single greatest threat to our national security. Responsibility for the years of deficit spending that have created our debt crisis rests squarely with both the Republicans and the Democrats. The debt doubled under President George W. Bush and doubled again under President Obama. During that time, both parties enjoyed control of Congress, and the deficit spending just keeps piling up. Let me try to make this bigger for you guys. Make sure you can see. If it doesn't have to be that way, despite what politicians say, but the idea that we can somehow balance the federal budget without cutting military spending and reforming entitlements is fantasy. What is required is leadership and political courage. As governor of a state with overwhelmingly Democratic legislature, Gary Johnson stood up to excessive spending, vetoed 750 bills and literally thousands of budget line items, and balanced the state's budget. Governor Johnson has pledged that his first major act as president will be to submit to Congress a truly balanced budget. No gimmicks, no imaginary cuts in the distant future. Real reductions to bring spending into line with revenues without tax increases. I don't know how you're going to do that. No line in the budget will be immune from scrutiny and reduction, and he pledges to veto any legislation that will result in deficit spending, forcing Congress to override his veto in order to spend money we don't have. No excuses, no games, a real balanced budget. No excuses, no games, a real balanced budget. The next line item, he wants to fix our tax code and cutting taxes. Today's federal tax code does all the wrong things. It penalizes productivity, savings, and investment while rewarding inefficiency and designating winners and losers according to political whim. For far too long, tax laws have been used not just as a means to collect needed revenues, but as a weapon with which to manipulate our behavior, create and destroy industries, and fulfill political dreams of social engineering. The result is a tax code that is more than 70,000 pages long, enforced by a government agency with almost 100,000 employees. It is nothing less than a massive deployment of government force on our lives, our finances, and our freedom. Governor Johnson advocates the elimination of tax subsidies, the double taxation embodied in business income taxes, and ultimately the replacement of all income and payroll tax with a single consumption tax that will allow every American and every business to determine their tax burden by making their own spending decisions. Taxes on purchases for basic necessity will be prebated, and all other purchases taxed equally regardless of income, status, or purpose. Many leading economists have long advocated such a shift in the way that we are taxed, and Gary Johnson believes this time has come to eliminate the punishing tax code we have today and replace it with a system that rewards productivity, investment, and savings. The IRS, as we know it today, would no longer be necessary, and Americans would no longer need to live in fear of the force of government being wielded under the guise of tax collection. All right, term limits. This is interesting. Americans are increasingly frustrated, even angry, that regardless of which political party is controlled, nothing really changes in Washington, D.C. The spending continues unchecked. The wars continue. Government keeps taking away more freedom. This disastrous allegiance to the status quo by career politicians is a direct result of the reality that those politicians are more concerned about keeping their jobs than about doing what needs to be done. That's why Gary Johnson is a strong advocate of term limits. Run for office, spend a few years doing the job at hand, and then return to private life. That's what Gary Johnson did as governor, and that's what senators and representatives should do. Oh, man. All right. Next, creating jobs for all Americans. During the 2012 campaign, Gary Johnson was lauded for having the best job creation record of all former governors running for president. His response as governor, I didn't create a single job. His point, of course, being that government doesn't create jobs except for itself. Entrepreneurs, growing companies, and robust economy create jobs. Government's role is to create and maintain a regulatory and tax environment in which private job creators can prosper. Gary Johnson did that as governor and would do so as president. Government regulation should exist to protect citizens from bad actors and the harm they might do to health, safety, and property. Regulations should be used to manipulate behavior, manage private lives and businesses, and to place unnecessary burdens on those who make our economy work. Eliminating unnecessary regulations and applying common sense to those rules that are necessary will free up capital and allow those who want and need to create jobs to do so. Likewise, adopting the tax reforms Governor Johnson advocates will literally create millions of jobs. While most politicians, Democrats and Republicans alike, suggest that modest reductions in business taxes might create jobs, Gary Johnson believes eliminating income taxes on businesses will transform the United States into the job magnet of the world. Why would any corporation move its operations offshore when the best tax haven on the planet is right here at home? That's interesting. All right, next is personal freedom. When you ask Americans today what the greatest threat to their individual liberties is, too often the response is the government. That is simply unacceptable in a nation that was literally founded on the notion of liberty. Imagine the disgust of the founding fathers if they were to see the national government spying on citizens' private communications, monitoring financial transactions, photographing license plates, and even demanding to know what a person is doing at a public library, all without warrants or due process of law. Imagine their shock to learn that the government has decided it is appropriate to tell adults that they can put in their bodies and even put them in jail for using marijuana, while allowing those same adults to consume alcohol and encouraging the medical profession to pump out addictive, deadly painkillers at will. The list goes on, but the point is clear. Decades of ever more intrusive government has steadily eroded personal freedom in this country. Adults are no longer free to make their own decisions. Virtually no part of Americans' private lives are today safe from government scrutiny and regulation. Gary Johnson believes government should be truly limited in the way the founders envisioned. Responsible adults should be free to marry whom they want, arm themselves if they want, make their own decisions about their bodies, and lead their personal lives as they see fit, as long as no harm is done to others. And they should be able to do so without unconstitutional scrutiny by the NSA, the ATF, the DEA, and other government agencies. All right, guys, got foreign policy. I'm going to skip some of these. Foreign policy. Let's just get down to the bottom. Foreign policy, as president, Gary Johnson moved quickly, decisively to refocus U.S. efforts and resources to attack the real threats we face in a strategic, thoughtful way. U.S. must get serious about cutting off millions of dollars that are flowing into violent extremist coffers every day. Relationships with strategic allies must be repaired and reinforced, and the simplest options of more boots on the ground and dropping more bombs must be replaced with strategies that will isolate and ultimately neuter those violent extremist groups. Let's talk about ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Immigration. Governor Johnson has long advocated a simplified and secure system of work visas by which willing workers and willing employers can meet a robust labor marketplace efficiently and economically. Aspiring immigrants would undergo a background check, pay taxes, and provide proof of employment. Making it simpler and efficient to enter the U.S. legally will provide the greatest security possible, allowing law enforcement to focus its time and resources on the criminals and bad actors who are, in reality, a relatively small portion of those who are today entering the country illegally. I want to read all of this. Criminal justice reform. How is it that the United States, the land of the free, has one of the highest incarceration rates in the world? The answer is simple. Over time, the politicians have criminalized far too many aspects of people's personal lives. The failed war on drugs is, of course, the greatest example. Well over 100 million Americans have at one time or another used marijuana, yet today simple possession and the use of marijuana remains a crime, despite the fact that the majority of Americans now favor its legalization. More generally, mandatory minimum sentences for a wide range of offenses and other efforts by politicians to be tough have removed far too much common sense discretion from judges and prosecutors. These factors, combined with the simple fact that we have too many unnecessary laws, have reduced a society with too many people in our prisons and jails, too many undeserving individuals saddled with criminal records, and seriously frayed relationship between law enforcement and those they serve. Fortunately, a growing number of state and local governments are taking steps toward meaningful criminal justice reform. The federal government must do the same, and Gary Johnson is committed to bringing a real leadership to this long overdue effort. Internet freedom and security. Gary Johnson has consistently opposed these attempts at government interference with internet, and as president would return the government to the side of freedom and innovation, not regulation. Looks like they're trying to regulate the internet, and he wants to make sure that doesn't happen. Environment. In a healthy economy that allows the market to function unimpeded, consumers, innovators, and personal choices will ultimately bring about the environmental restoration protection society desires. Conversely, destroying prosperity and innovation through government intervention will only harm the environment. When it comes to global climate change, Governor Johnson believes too many politicians are having the wrong debate. Is the climate changing? Probably so. Is man contributing to that change? Probably so. The important question, however, is whether the government's efforts to regulate, tax, and manipulate the marketplace in order to impact that change are cost-effective or effective at all. Given the realities of global energy and resource use, there is little evidence that the burden being placed on Americans is making a difference that justifies a cost. Gary Johnson on education. Governor Gary Johnson was one of the first governors in the nation to propose and advocate a universally available program of school choice. He did so while governing with an overwhelmingly Democratic legislature and while facing a powerful teachers union. He was well aware that his proposal would not be enacted and would generate fierce opposition. However, he believed it was important to raise the issue and force teachers unions to defend a clearly failing status quo. More broadly, Governor Johnson believes there is no role for the federal government in education. He would eliminate the federal Department of Education and return control to the state and local levels. He opposes Common Core and any other attempts to impose national standards and requirements at local schools, believing the key to restoring education excellence in the United States lies in innovation, freedom, and flexibility that federal interference inherently discourages. As governor, he saw firsthand that the cost of federal education programs and mandates far outweigh any benefits, both educationally and financially. Governor Johnson on abortion. Governor Johnson recognized that the right of a woman to choose is the law of the land and has been for several decades. That right must be respected, and ultimately he believes this is a very personal, individual decision. He feels that each woman must be allowed to make decisions about her own health and well-being, and that these decisions should not be dictated by the government. Further, Governor Johnson feels strongly that women seeking to exercise their legal right must not be subjected to persecution or denied access to health services by politicians in Washington or elsewhere who are insistent on politicizing such an intensely personal and serious issue. And then Governor Johnson on the war on drugs. The Johnson-Wells team supports the legalization of marijuana and believes each state should have the right to legalize and regulate it, as is the case with alcohol. Gary Johnson came out as an early proponent of the national stage in 1999 while governor of New Mexico, and publicly stated his support of marijuana legalization. Johnson and Will do not support the legalization of other recreational drugs that are currently illegal. It is, however, their belief that drug rehabilitation and harm reduction programs are more acceptable and successful than incarceration and arrest for drug use. All right, so here are the issues for Governor Johnson and Will campaign. Gary Johnson is a libertarian running for the president of the United States. So there are other options other than Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Now, of course, they don't have the funds. They're probably not going to get the mainstream media. Again, his moniker is "We need to make America sane again." And so this is something for you to look at. I want to make sure that you guys are informed and that you know what your options are so you can make the best decision. Again, here on www.onissues.org, you can look at all the candidates and you can check out their history for what they stood for so you can make the best decision as it relates to where you're going to cast your vote. Again, this is ERGJ from ERGJ TV. This is Education Station, and we have just presented Gary Johnson and his campaign as he runs from the libertarian platform for President of the United States 2016. All right, stay informed, guys. Be educated in your decisions. We'll catch you later.